I'll just be the recording has already started, and let me welcome our club president, Julie Cortez.
Welcome to all of you. It is a special day today because we are all here together, all 7 of us, and we will have a wonderful day. I would like to present to you now our Toastmaster of the meeting, Graham Kern.
Thank you. Thank you, Julie. Thank you, Madam President. Good evening or good afternoon or good morning, whatever it is, wherever you are. Welcome along, ladies and gentlemen, to this meeting number 67 of Witty Storytellers Online. The theme for today's meeting, creating feelings of trust, generosity and bonding, which is interesting as we lead up towards Easter and we all start to eat too much chocolate. That gives me feelings of bonding and generosity, not necessarily trust. I remember getting into fights with my brothers and sisters about whether they got more chocolate than I did and whether they were stealing my chocolate. You know what children are like. We'll discuss feelings of trust and generosity and bonding throughout the meeting. At this stage, we have 2 storytellers, 2 evaluators, a table topic section, and a general evaluator. So I'll just make sure that everybody is au fait with who's doing what today. I am your Toastmaster. Federica, you're going to be our timekeeper for today. Can you give us an indication of what people should watch for with the timing? The official Toastmasters timing device. I can see that, yes. We actually can't...
It's my one, to be honest, but yes.
Yeah, it's a bit bright. We can't actually see the color. So if you hold it at an angle to the camera, it works better. That's, yeah. Anyway, that's green. We can tell that that's greenish. When it goes yellow, that should give us an indication. Yes.
Yes, it goes the yellow.
There it is. We can see the yellow.
It's going to be red. It's going to change.
Excellent. So, ladies and gentlemen, watch out for that, but I would also suggest using your own timing device because, as you know, in the online environment, it is very difficult to keep an eye on another screen as well as the main one. So, thank you, Federica. Also, we have 2 storytellers today. The first storyteller is now going to be Don McCandy. Don Tiger. And our second storyteller will be Julie. I'll give introductions to those shortly. Zaldi, you will be evaluating Don. You're prepared to do that. And who was going to be evaluating?
Svetlana will evaluate Julie.
Yeah, and Svetlana will be doing the second evaluation. Svetlana also doing the table topics. You're prepared for that?
Yes.
Good. And our general evaluation today coming from Michelle. Haven't had a general evaluation from Michelle for ages, so that will be a good thing. Everybody is aware of what they're doing today? Excellent. Then let's get her underway, shall we? There's a thumb up question here I can see coming from Michelle.
Yes, I'm just looking at the chat and wondering if you've seen it and the timer has seen it. Julie is saying that her speech is longer. It's
8 to 12 because it is the lead in any condition speech. Yes. So I'll let the timekeeper know about that as we go into each event. But I can see that my red light is on, so my Toastmasters introduction is now beyond where I should be, so I will get us started. As I say, we have 2 storytellers today. The first of those is going to be Don. Now, Don is going to be talking of his experiences with Toastmasters and how they've affected his life, past, present, and future. This is the speech from the, let me check the details here. Don is doing a presentation mastery speech, evaluation, and feedback speech 2. Either present a new speech or the same speech that incorporates some or all of the feedback received from the presentation of the first speech. Don, can I check, is this a first version of this speech and we will be looking for, we'll be making suggestions, or is this a second version, in which case we should know what you've been told to do? It's your first version.
Yes, this will be the first version. Thank you.
All right. So, ladies and gentlemen, our first storyteller today is Don McCandy. And for a time of 5 to 7 minutes, please, Mr. Timekeeper, with lights at 5, 6, and 7. Please welcome Don McCandy with Presentation Mastery 3, DTM.
Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster. May 6th, excuse me, 2016 was a spectacular day. The sun was shining, the birds were singing, the flowers were in bloom. And as I walked out of prison and hugged my brother and my 2 sisters, I was filled with hope. So how does one experience hell and still have dignity? God and Toastmasters. You see, several months into my incarceration, I was invited to a Toastmaster meeting. I was greeted warmly. The meeting was well organized. The speeches were excellent. My topic that night was, what's your most embarrassing moment at work? And I told a story about after I got my forestry degree, my first job, it was pointed out to me that I didn't even know how a tree grew. There was laughter in the room. Laughter in prison is rare. That sweet sound, and I knew that I was where I belonged. I dove in with both feet. During my tenure as membership vice president, we doubled our membership. During my tenure as vice president of education, not only did we meet all our goals, but after over a year of effort, we were able to teach general population Toastmaster leadership classes. After I got out, I was a kid in a candy store. I savored Mother Nature. The sounds such as ocean on the beach, the sights of colors, smells like rain in the forest, and taste. Oh my God. Food with taste, fresh food. It was such a blessing. I'd forgotten what good food tasted like. Well, after a bit, it was time for me to return to society. And though I was ready to contribute to society, society was not welcoming to me at this point. So I did what I had to do. I took a minimum wage job and I moved in permanently with my parents. Not too long after I got out, about 3 months after I got out, I was given the opportunity to join a local Toastmaster club, which I did. It seemed like I was well received, so I gave a speech. And my first speech was on the challenges of a felon in our current society. And I gave experiences from my own life in recent months. The speech seemed well received. The evaluation was good. 2 days later, I was informed that the leadership team had taken away my membership based on my past. This was extremely disappointing, for I had been told when I got out I would be welcomed with open arms with Toastmasters. My disappointment soon turned to anger, and I vowed to never have anything to do with this organization ever again. Let's fast forward our story 2.5 years. Still struggling with acceptance, I was contacted by the very person that invited me to that first Toastmaster group, and she encouraged me to join an online club and assured me that this time it would be different. So I took the risk. And I joined a club that some of you may be familiar with. It's called Witty Storytellers Online. The first couple meetings were excellent. I participated in the speech contest, and somehow I won that. I have now joined 4 Toastmaster clubs. In terms of Toastmasters, my cup runneth over. I've made new friends. I have a mentor. I've taken on a protege. Like I said before, I won a speech contest. I have been given the privilege of being a vice president of education once again. Toastmasters is going to help me meet my ultimate goal. For you see, I've never given up on my dream. I've never given up on my ultimate goal, and that is DTM. Distinguished Tiger McAndy. Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you, DTM, Don McAndy. I think you've made that, whether you've got the distinguished Toastmaster or not, is not relevant. You've certainly got the distinguished member of this club. And we welcome you to this club. I don't know the background of that other story, but you're most welcome at any club that I'm a member of. All right, we'll talk about your evaluation shortly, but let's instead move to our second storyteller today. Now, this is an unusual speech. Julie has been doing lead in any condition, the team collaboration speech. And what she has to do in the lead in any situation speech is present a speech which talks about an experience that she has had that has lasted at least 6 months as a leader, and the impact that that has had on her, but also the impact of a 360-degree evaluation. Now, for those of you who haven't undergone a 360-degree evaluation, they're an interesting beast. I'm not going to talk too much about it because Julie may well refer to it, but it is where you get evaluated in 360 degrees from those who are your superiors, those who are your peers, and those for whom you are responsible. So that's the purpose of a 360-degree evaluation, to get views from all around. But the full details will come up as Julie Curtis presents her speech, Lead in Any Condition, talking about her leadership role. The time of this speech is 8 to 12 minutes, so if we can have green at 8, yellow at 10, and red at 12 minutes, please, Mr. Timekeeper. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Julie Curtis.
I was 14-year-old, and I wrote a theater piece. I wanted to play it for the parents. As I was freckled all over, I didn't give myself the first role, but I was behind the curtain. I was the one who brought it. I was the one who directed it, and I played a very small role directing behind the curtains. Many years later, when I was already almost 84, I again directed behind the curtain. In Lewisham Speakers Club, the one I have been already 10 years, I decided to be secretary. So I can be base camp manager when the pathway will come to our club and teach the others how to approve and how to be base camp manager. I still remember a meeting. They came to my house and we sit around a round table, which I have here. And that was my rock bottom meeting. Because I tried to tell the president that our fares are too high. That is why we don't have enough members. In Lewisham Toastmaster, we ask exactly twice as much as in this meeting in Witty Storytellers. And we have some people who don't work, some are just arrived in England and so on. And everything I proposed, I was told, no, we know better. Okay. So I wanted to resign, but I am not one to give up very fast. So I decided just to keep quiet until Pathway arrives to our England in Europe. And then they will need me anyway, because no one knew about Pathway than me. So I closed my mouth, didn't propose anything at any meeting. We met in a pub, and I just stopped speaking until we had to decide our new president. And then I proposed a president, and that president was indeed voted in later. And then, just a year ago, in March, Pathway arrived. And Pathway arrived, I was Pathway ambassador in my club and tried to speak again about Pathway, and the future president joined. And the future VP, who is one of my proteges, joined. And even the president, who was against everything I proposed, joined Pathway. So now they needed advice from me. And I was there to give it whenever they wanted. I am very happy to tell that a year later I was still secretary, and I helped the new president and the new VP to learn how to be base camp manager. And even the old president, who was against everything I proposed before, through my blog post, he learned how to go to Club Central and put in an award, and was quite happy about it. So now I was almost leading the Basecamp manager team. But what I did, and I am very happy to say that now I am not really needed anymore, I did teach the president and the VP how to be Basecamp manager, explaining everything and looking with a lot of pleasure how they finished level 1. And I have to tell you now that Lewisham, between 250 clubs, is now the 7th concerning Pathway, and all the committee members are on Pathway, and we had only one, the old VP, who had never finished DTM because he didn't want to do a high performance leadership, but was there always and helping always. Finally, last week decided to go also Pathway and begin. And with him and all the new Toastmasters who go and give their icebreaker one after other and who are very enthusiastic about Pathway, soon we will have 100%, as we have in Witty Storytellers for a long time ago, on Pathway. And I want to show you a picture that was last week. Do you see? I hope you can see it. Here are two beautiful icebreakers, new members, and in the middle is presenting them the president who gave me long time ago that bottom rock feeling. And he is also presenting them. Here are our new pathway icebreakers. And I have to tell you, I am really happy I achieved that. It meant also, as I usually said, and I believe you don't have to lead from the top. You can lead from the bottom once you are there. You can also help others to go up. And that is my most important message to you. My biggest pleasure is see them go on and help and tell about pathway to others. And when I heard our new VP telling, indeed, the pathway icebreaker really held my hand a lot better than in the CC, which I just completed. That was my biggest award I could get, Mr. Toastmaster.
Congratulations, Julie, and congratulations not only from those of us here in Witty Storytellers, but from those of us who know you from other online clubs, or for that matter, for those of us who have been involved with you online in your leadership role. I thank you, and I thank you for that. Now, we'll get evaluations of both of those stories shortly, but before we do, one of the things that people in Toastmasters either love or hate is table topics. I got to say, I love table topics. I reckon that if I couldn't have conventional speeches, I'd still be happy with a meeting so long as there were table topics for everybody. Given that there are only 7 of us here, I think that's probably a pretty fair chance. So our table topics master for today, will you please make most welcome Svetlana?
Thank you, Toastmaster of the Day. Today's theme of the day is create feelings of trust, generosity, bonding. And what a better way of creating those feelings than in a story or by a story. We were told that a special hormone is sprinkled into our blood, and that is oxytocin. But the name of the hormone is not so important. The important is the reaction. Even today, we had a chance to observe some of these feelings that were created by the stories. And my first question will be, the story that was told by Dawn, Tiger, brought feelings of bonding to me, and I almost cried. Good, you didn't see my face. Now, the question is, what feelings did Dawn's story create in you? What feelings did Dawn's story create in you? This is not speech evaluation. You're talking just about answering my question. And the question goes to Zaldi. No, Zaldi is, sorry. Zaldi, you're evaluating Dawn. No. The question goes to Michelle.
Yes, thank you. I was trying to signal you, Svetlana, and I actually already unmuted myself. So thank you for the opportunity. As I was listening to Dawn, I felt a combination of emotions. It wasn't just one feeling. Part of it was joy, just joy, just happiness at having him come back to the family, I mean the Toastmasters family, because although he did not mention me by name, I was that person who had assured him 2.5 years ago that he would be very welcome in my club. And so when that club, well, not the entire club, just 3 officers, when they chose to vote him out, I left as well. So he was out of the club, I was out of the club. So, so it was so joyful to hear how he had come back and how he was not just with one club, but with 4 clubs. He's coming back with a vengeance, obviously, in a positive way. I also felt, I know we're not supposed to feel false pride, but I think it is all right to feel justifiable pride. And so I felt pride in how much he has achieved and how much he will achieve. The fact that he won as our contestant, as our speech champion. And who knows? I'm hoping, who knows, that he might even win a place at the International Videotape Contest. So I felt pride. And the third emotion I felt was anticipation. It was a feeling of there's more. What else is coming up? I don't know whether to call it anticipation or excitement. I think it's more of anticipation, more of looking forward to what's beyond the horizon. So those 3 emotions all there, and I just feel great. So thank you for giving me that chance to answer that question. Back to you, Madam Table Topics Master.
Thank you, Michelle. My second question concerns the feeling of generosity that is produced through storytelling. And I personally had that example today as I was listening to Julie's speech. Because achieving personal success is a personal choice, and then leading others towards the same heights requires generosity if a group does not want that. What feelings did you feel when you were listening to Julie's speech? And that question goes to Federico. I can time you, Federico, if you don't mind. Unmute yourself.
Give me a second, please. Okay. Well, personally, I understand the experience of Julie in a certain way, and I share it since it was more or less my experience when in those days I was the VPE, and I needed to, let's say, train my mentee who was the secretary and the next VPE on the queue. And it's an interesting story because it was a crazy and difficult moment for us in the case of Pathways, since, as you can imagine, people were quite rebellious, and we needed to somehow encourage the people to change that mindset in their way of thinking. What she did is something for me that not many people will do, of jump to that stage of trying to become the secretary after 10 years is something that most of people will avoid. Let's say I have even some members that they despise to be the timer because they are already DPMs or they are already the district directors or those kind of roles. Why? Because I'm already the superhero in the district. And what she did is something that shows us that leaders are in any moment of our lives, and you need to jump in those stages to help others, not only to help myself and my ego. This is a really good example of what we should do more often, not going to try to do, let's say, only the most important roles, but most importantly, help others. Because in Toastmasters, we are not only to help ourselves, but helping others. And thank you, Julie, for your great example that despite that you have been a member for a long time, you still show that each and every single role is important.
Thank you, Federico. My third question is about creating a feeling of trust. And it will again go to, will be related to one of the speeches. This time it's an impromptu speech by Michelle. We heard from Tiger that the club that welcomed him after he left the prison was very, they were very kind to him. He got a lot of nice feedback for his speeches and for his participation. But after that, there was a shock. It was a stabbing in the back by withdrawal of him from his membership from that club and all that. And then today we heard Michelle's impromptu speech, and I certainly felt trust towards what she was saying. So false welcome and trust that is created by the impromptu speech. Please tell us how that trust was created while we were listening to Michelle. That's not an easy question, but I am challenging you. So how did Michelle, by her impromptu speech, create that feeling of trust? And it was a very strong feeling. Who is prepared to answer this question? Good, Graham. Unmute yourself, please.
Madam Topics Master, ladies and gentlemen, I think I've told you the story before of when I was a young boy and I heard a song as I was listening to the radio on my way over to my grandmother's house. I was about 8 years old and I got angry. I got really, really angry at the treatment that was being handed out to a woman with a thing called I'm the Son of Hickory Hollis Tramp. And that helped set the fact that I get angry when I see injustice. And I have to say, I get angry when I see injustice to this very day. Something that Michelle spoke about during her table topic, and I'm sorry if this is going to embarrass you, Don, but I'm going to say this anyway. Something that Michelle spoke about was the fact that she had made a pledge to Don that he would be welcome. And when he wasn't made welcome and felt he had to leave, well, he had no choice about having to leave, she said, I will leave with you. That's loyalty. That's trust. I have to say that I am a genuine, and I mean this from the bottom of my heart, I am a genuine believer of if you do the crime, then you should do the time. But once you've done the time, then you've done your bloody time and you are now welcome back into society. That's how our system is supposed to work. I am really proud of Michelle for standing up and saying, I told my friend that he would be welcome back into society because he has done his time. And if you're not willing to accept him, then you're not willing to accept me either. That's loyalty, that's trust, and I'm very proud to count her as a friend. Madam Toastmaster, Topics Master.
Thank you, Graham. Indeed, in my opinion, as Table Topics Master today, we had discussed 3 case studies. And it was an extremely, an extremely emotional and also learning experience, thanks to the fact that all of the speakers were experienced speakers. I'm not referring to the titles, etc., but experienced speakers who are able to relate, to communicate their thoughts and emotions in a valid way. With this, I will finish today's Table Topics. Thank you so much for your cooperation.
Thank you, Svetlana. And thank you for getting everybody who's not otherwise down on the agenda as a speaker the opportunity to speak. I think that's a terrific thing to do. All right, time now to move on to evaluation. And I don't need to tell you how important evaluation is, except that I will anyway, because I think it's something that we all need to be reminded of. To me, evaluation is the keystone of the Toastmasters experience. It is what keeps the arch together. We can all speak. I mean, that's what we do. But if we don't get evaluated, if we don't get feedback, then we're just flapping our gums, and there's no point to that. So to present evaluations today, we have two evaluators. We have Zaldi and Svetlana. We'll begin with Zaldi. Zaldi, can you please provide your evaluation? Actually, I think Don may have just stepped away from the desk for a moment. No, he's back. So, Zaldi, can you please present your evaluation?
Okay. When I hear a story about someone being in jail, what goes into my mind is the movie The Shawshank Redemption. So it's a movie that had Morgan Freeman and Tim Robbins, and the story was written by one of the master storytellers, Stephen King. So, Don, I love your speech because you were not afraid of providing disclosure in your story, and you had a very good figure of speech, chiasmic or a chiasmus. So you tried to welcome society, but society didn't welcome you. So that was a form of. And there was another one. Oh, okay, I'll get that later. You had all the elements of a story. You had a bad guy when you were take your membership from Toastmasters was taken away. So, and you had a surprise ending. DTM. Everybody was, or maybe just me, or anyone else was thinking, what was that DTM supposed to stand for? We were thinking that you were going for your distinguished Toastmaster, but it turned out to be distinguished Tiger McCandy. So, it's a feel-good story, and some things you could add to your speech are like the Shawshank Redemption. There was a flashback to the past on why he landed in jail. So you can probably provide some brief backgrounder on that so that your story becomes quite complete. And with that, okay, it's the end of my notes. So congratulations for that speech, and you are very welcome back here in society, especially with this club.
Thank you, Zaldi. Thank you. Our second evaluation is going to be presented by Svetlana, and Svetlana will be evaluating the lead in any circumstance speech by Julie. So, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Svetlana. Again, for time of 2 to 3 minutes, we'd like it 2, 2.5, and 3 if you would, Mr. Timekeeper.
Thank you, Toastmaster of the Day, Graham. When I heard about 360-degree evaluation for the first time, it brought to my mind a metaphor, an image of a Central Asian kebab that is grilled on all sides. And what Graham mentioned in his introduction, that a person has to be evaluated from the peers, from the point of view of the supervisor or boss in a company or in Toastmasters Club, and from the point of view of people who that person leads, who work under his supervision. But what we heard from Julie today was a very well-structured story. It had 3 parts. The introduction was a throwback to childhood, when 14 years old girl with freckles, and that was an amazing poetic detail that gave a full picture of that situation, where she was producing a play and playing in it on the stage a very small little role. That was her first experience of managing, guiding, leading behind the scenes. The second was her experience of a Toastmaster with a Bottom Rock meeting. And the third one was the triumph The third part of her speech was about triumph, how she achieved success. And probably some people in that second part of the story can attribute that success to themselves, but she's totally content attributing that to herself, knowing her role in that success. So we had a lesson from Julie's story, how to be a leader behind the scenes and feel happy about it. The story related to deep set values. And if some of us were a little bit discouraged whether those values actually work in real life, Julie's story was a proof that that value is there and it's always worth tapping into it. Today, Julie's background was different. It was black, and she put the Toastmaster poster. Her just one hand was used as a, as a conductor in an orchestra to to maybe keep a pulse on our attention and emotion. And if not for some personal details, I would recommend this speech for public view because it had nothing unnecessary in it. Everything was working towards the conclusion, towards the general impression and the lessons that we managed to draw. Thank you.
And thank you, Svetlana. Thank you very much. Thank you for your evaluation. Also, thank you, Zaldi, for yours. I won't say too much about them because that's Michelle's job. But before we get to Michelle, Federico has one of the most thankless tasks in a Toastmasters Club meeting, and that is to sit there and be a timekeeper. You've got to keep watching the time, and when you'd much rather be listening and deeply engaged in what the speaker's saying. So it's a thankless task, except that I'm going to thank him for doing so. Thank you, Federico, for being our timekeeper today. Can we get a report on how we have done thus far?
Your introduction, Graham, was 3 minutes 40 seconds. Then we have the speech from Dawn. It was 5 minutes 21 seconds. The speech from Julie was 9 minutes 9 seconds. The introduction of the table topics was 1 minute. The first table topic from Michelle was 2 minutes 10 seconds. My speech was 1 minute 55 seconds. Graham's speech was 1 minute 44. Saldi evaluation 2 minutes 20, and Svetlana evaluation 3 minutes 22 seconds.
Thank you. Thank you. I did say it was a thankless task, but I'm going to thank you again for doing that. Thank you very much. All right. Everything in Toastmasters is evaluated, including, of course, the evaluators and the Toastmaster and the Table Topics Master and all those other things. And we haven't seen her do this for a while. So, ladies and gentlemen, please make most welcome, but don't swoon because she's only human. Here's Michelle Albalem.
You are so hilarious. And just another thank you to our timer. You did your report in 28 minutes, 28 seconds. Wow. Yes, I agree. I have not served as general evaluator in this club for quite some time. And it was a wonderful experience of pulling myself from being so engaged and keeping this monitor to observe and take notes. So there were several things that I felt proud of being a member of this club. As an observer, I felt that the Toastmaster of the meeting was excellent. He provided short, very relevant transitions, very upbeat. He gave information, background information. Although we did not have any guests, it's always a good way for a Toastmaster to practice in case there are guests or for people who might listen to the recording, to briefly explain table topics and to briefly explain the role of the general evaluator and the evaluator. So great job. Let's give a big hand to Brea. Great job, indeed. I love both stories. They were very different, but both of them fit into our focus of being stories, both powerful, both dramatic, both memorable. great stories. And from that, I go to the evaluators. It was wonderful to have great stories matched up with excellent evaluation. I like the way that Zaldi had a reference to Shawshank Redemption, because that's probably one of the best movies about somebody who is in prison and comes out. And I like the suggestion about adding closure to the speech. So great suggestion, Zaldi. Svetlana, I didn't even realize there were three parts, but you watched, you listened to Julie's speech, and you found that there were three parts. And as you explained it, I realized, yes, there were three parts. So great job there. The table topics, what can I say? Svetlana, you had very creative table topics and very challenging. I think this is your mark. It's your trademark. Whenever you have table topics, you're very creative and very challenging. So let me see. I think I have noted all the gems, all the great things that I observed. Oh, there was one thing. We don't have a grammarian. I just want to say, Graham, I love your uses. And I was going to start scribbling, but I got engrossed, so I didn't catch some of the great word usage. But you had several figures of speech. Great job there. Now, because we're Toastmasters, we always want to find areas for improvement. So there's one area, and if you will look at the chat, you will see that it was really distracting me. I don't usually use caps, but I was already using caps. And that was because I was so distracted by people who were not muting. So in an online environment, unless the speaker says, I want to hear all the sounds, I want to hear the laughter, I want to hear the sneezing, the chuckling and everything, let us please mute ourselves. Let us remember that, please. That is one thing that can distract from the online ambience. The second suggestion, and I know for some of us, English is not the first language, but when we speak about pathways, let's put the S, please, because it is pathways. The educational program is pathways. So let's remember that. And the rest, lapses in past, present, future, that's fine because, as I said, English may not be the first language for everyone, but just that word pathways, let's have an S to that. And the other suggestion is, very creative, very challenging table topics. Svetlana, the only suggestion I would have, which I think Graham or somebody also made at another time, is maybe shorten the lead-ups to the table topics questions so that there will be more time for table topics. You could probably have called on one or even two more if you shorten the lead-ups a bit. Have I covered everyone? The timer, yes, I think I've covered everyone. So, and I'm 4 minutes and 40 seconds. I believe I have 5, but anyway, back to you, Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you, Michelle. Thank you very much for your general evaluation. May I say thank you to everybody who has contributed today. Today's is going to be a short, sharp and shiny meeting because we are, in fact, just about at the end of our agenda, which is a bit of a pity because I'd like to have seen one more storyteller if we could. But we've discussed this, we've held meetings, we at least have a plan of action going forward, which is more than some clubs that I've been involved in, I can tell you. Before I end or ask for the recording to end, is there anybody who has any observations they want to make for the tape? If not, then I would ask that Mr. Sergeant-at-Arms, if you can end, or whoever is doing the recording, I think it might actually be...
Mr.
Yes,
wait,
yes.
Don't end. I was the general evaluator and I'm just reading the chat. And yes, Svetlana, you're right. You did make it shorter this time, just a little bit shorter more, but you were definitely major shortening from the other one, I think last week or the other week.
Yes, last week it was like a workshop.
Most improved player award.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed.
Creative and very challenging table topics. Yes. Back to you, sorry. Back to
Thank you.
All right, so unless there are any other observations that people want made for the tape, I will ask whoever is recording, probably the president, I think, Julie, this is yours if you want to hit it's up to you, of course. But I'm now going to wrap up my role as Toastmaster and hand control back to the club president. Ladies and gentlemen, here she is, Julie Curtis.
We had, as Svetlana said, a sharp, short, and shiny meeting.
Triple S.
Which I now stop, and thank you everyone for contributing to our wonderful meeting.